today is Bob Lacey's very last radio show before he sails off into the retirement that he's worked so hard for and deserves so much. And a couple days ago, Bob's wife, Mary, reached out to me and said, girl, I am enjoying a brand new Bobism. And I was like, a new Bobism? This is too good to be true. And I'll be darned. Guess who's here, everybody? Hey, Mary.
Hey, I had to leave the people with what they want,
Oh, this is glorious. I'm so excited. And I'm sure that right now Bob's face is like, what is about to happen? So what is this new Bobism that you're enjoying?
Oh, it's a good one. So over the years, they've gotten funnier and funnier. And this one just happened the other day. And I thought, oh, must share. So we have a guest room and Bob's in it right now because he's not wearing his mouthpiece or his retainer. And I banished him. So he's in the guest room and that's fine. And that's working great. But
because he's snoring or because you don't want his teeth to get crooked? Which one is it?
He's snoring. He's taking him out in the middle of the night now. So, and something to know about me is I take sleep so seriously. I have, red lights, green lights, blue lights, blackout shades. I've got, little special teas. I have an Aura ring that I wear every night that tells me how I sleep. I am very strict about sleep. So he knew he was going to be gone. So he goes to the guest room and I am sleeping like a champ. I'm starfishing in the bed. The best sleep of my life. So I'm really, really risking that right now with this story, but could not resist. So Bob sleeps in the guest room and he wakes up the next morning and his eyes are almost swollen shut. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't know. And he's trying to take Benadryl and he's doing all of these things. I thought, oh, okay, whatever. So then the second morning he wakes up again, swollen eyes, almost swollen shut. And then it occurs to me, my son has a girlfriend named Jordan, and we got lucky this time. We love Jordan. And she came and stayed with us last summer with Hampton, and they had separate bedrooms. They both have cats. So Jordan kept her cat in the guest room. And I don't think Bob recognizes this yet, but I think it's cat dander. He's sleeping on the pillows in the bed, and his eyes are swollen. But now I'm in a conundrum because I don't want to tell him because then he's going to come back.
Oh no! So you're choosing between your own need for rest and recovery and Bob's need to be able to see out of his eyes. I can see why this is an issue. I really can.
Okay, now you say it like that, but he's going to find out Bob. On the show, and he's going to probably have to pull his eyes open with toothpicks to see me, to come yell at me about this. But I put it together about 3 days ago, and I just can't tell him.
This is the Bob Laceyest of Bob Lacey things, and it's happening in his own home, which is proof that man really can't go anywhere or do anything without tripping over himself.
And I think he's gone down the bunny trail if he's got something like terminally wrong with him. And so now I'm feeling even worse.
The Bob and Sheri website, the Oddcast, contest info, bobandsheri.com.
If you are just joining us, you just missed my wife, who just admitted to Sheri what she has been doing to me. And I had no idea. Because I've been taking my retainer out at night, I've been snoring, and she has banished me to the guest room, at least for a while. And the guest room was used by Hampton's girlfriend who had a cat, and the cat lived in the guest room. So I'm getting up, every morning, and my eyes are swollen and almost shut. And then she comes into the kitchen. She says, "Why are your eyes so red?" And I'm going, "Oh my God, did I drink too much last night? Why are your eyes?" And she's saying it day after day. And I'm starting to get really concerned. Jordan's cat was sleeping on the pillow that I put my face in.
Yeah,
that's what. And she did not tell me.
You didn't put it together? You didn't put that together?
I didn't put it together, no. Huh.
Well, to be fair, Bob, no. It took Mary a bit.
Oh, there's no big fair. I can't see. There's no big fair.
And she knew. Here's where you have to feel, you know what? You owe her your gratitude. You do. You need to say thank you because she realized why your eyes were swollen shut. and why you couldn't breathe. And rather than just letting you continue to suffer in confusion and silence, she confessed and has lost her peaceful sleep. So I think you probably should apologize to her for any suspicion
What
that
should
you
I?
had.
I'm not doing the apology. She knew about the cat. She should have,
But she,
and she said, "Why are your eyes red?" You know, I feel like Gary Busey, and it's because of Jordan's cat.
but you
And
know what? She had an
people
attack of
didn't even
conscience.
people
She
never,
did.
people never believed me when I said I had cat allergies, and I was putting up with her cat for all those years.
Hey, Bob,
Wow.
between your eyes and the burning in your boxer shorts,
Yeah.
I mean, this
Marriage
isn't
is
new
tough.
territory, is it? Marriage is
Marriage
so
is
hard.
tough. It really is. It's a struggle. Well, I can't wait for this show to be over today. It's Bob and Sheri.
Sign up for our newsletter. We never spam you.
Never did.
Get Bob and Sheri exclusives. Just go to bobandsheri.com.
This being my last show, I must at this point thank the people that I have worked with for so many years. I've already, I think, multiple times thanked you, the audience, for the wonderful comments and for just supporting me with a wonderful way to make a living. Thank you again. So when I think about the people I work with, one word comes to mind, and that word is trust. I would trust everybody on this show with my finances, with my home, with my dog, with my wife. Every single person I work with is such a solid, wonderful person. Let's take Doc as an example. He is such a pro. He has brought such a peaceful, quiet humor to the program. You don't hear him as much because he's doing all sorts of things with commercials and with promos and tracking down stuff that I can't find. But just a very, very wonderful person and quietly funny. Do you remember? I can't remember what we were talking about, but he got some sort of an award from one of us on the show, and it happened to be on Martin Luther King Day, I think it was. And he pointed that out. He said, I've been waiting for it. Interesting that it shows up on MLK Day. And everybody just totally cracked up. He's got a wonderful sense of humor, and I've loved traveling with him. Heather is just amazing. I would watch Heather when we're doing happy hour, and if I can see her in the screen, and most of the time she's eyeing what's being said, and I'll throw a line out there, and if she cracks a smile or laughs, I know that it landed. She really was somebody, and she didn't even know that I was always doing that, but she was a test for me as to whether or not the line worked. She is such a lovely, talented person, and I've totally enjoyed working with her. Lamar, what can I say? I just realized the other day that we've been together close to 30 years.
Yeah.
And you are one of the most naturally funny people I have ever met in my life. If you had had a different situation, Sharon and I talk about this all the time. When you have family, you have to tend to them, and it sometimes will affect your career. If you had remained a dapper bachelor and just said, I'm going to Atlanta and I'm going to do stand up, sooner or later, you would have had a sitcom or you would have had a concert on Netflix. You are absolutely such a natural, and I am so glad that you are with us right now because despite the fact that I'll be out bird watching, I really want this program to continue, and I know it will. And I think that you're just going to be such a big part of it. And that leads me to Max, who has been with us for 32 years. There was a guy named Freddie DeCorvita, and he was the director of the Tonight Show. You never saw him much on the show, but he stood within a few feet of Johnny Carson, and he would listen, he would watch, and when things started to need to be wrapped up or went sideways or needed to continue, his hand gestures would tell Carson exactly what needed to be done. And you have been that for us, in addition to running all of the sound I don't know how you've done it over the years. You are absolutely a magician at it. And everyone in this business knows what you do and who you are. The sophistication that you have with the selection of appropriate music or sound effects or quotes is unbelievable. Your specific talent requires a deep knowledge of entertainment, and you have it. And part of it is because that's where your life took you. You're an actor, you've been in national commercials, you've been on the stage, and you've been running this thing so beautifully. And I know in the future that you will be expanding because you are a personality also. You're a director, a producer, but you are a personality. And you give Sheri such comfort. She is going to be with people that she is totally comfortable with. And that is going to make her gig a whole lot better. And I will also say that Max is probably the most generous person I've ever known.
Leave us a talk back. Talk back with the free Bob and Sheri app.
You know, I knew probably years ago that at one point, because I am much older than Sheri, I would be saying goodbye to the program and my listeners. I'll come back every now and then, but pretty much wrapping up my career. I knew that I would be talking about Sheri. And it's funny because what I thought about years ago is exactly what I'm thinking about right now. You are the quickest, funniest person.
Oh, we cannot do this. We just cannot do this.
You are.
We just can't.
You are the quickest, funniest person on radio, period. I said that years ago when you started winning these awards, the Gracie Allen Awards. I've listened to really the great radio persons of this country because I grew up in the metropolitan New York area. And New York and Hartford, when I was young, had just amazing personalities. Mary the K, Cousin Brucey, Dan Ingram, one of my heroes, Gene Shepard, and Lee Baby Sims, Joey Reynolds. All of these people were unbelievably good. I'm not going to mention people who were big in radio, either on terrestrial radio or on satellite. You're funnier than any of them. You're not only funnier, you're quicker. You don't miss anything. You miss nothing. So, from a professional standpoint, and by the way, this probably the smartest person I know. From a professional standpoint, that was your gift to me. From a personal standpoint, I have in my head had you as a sister, a younger sister, a smarter sister. I've had you as obviously the greatest partner of my life. I have talked to you more than any person in my life, and that includes my parents and my wonderful wife, Mary, because 32 years, 4 hours a day, plus several hours after that, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year, that's an awful lot of talking. And sometimes shows get together because there's one on one side of the spectrum, another on the other. You and I have been simpatico from the beginning. And I think that's why we worked. We agreed on what life should be, on how one should conduct oneself, on the type of program that we wanted to do, how to treat the listeners. And you've just been my best friend.
And I know you have to take your toys and go home now.
People don't know this, but I went through a couple of hard times financially, and I'm not getting into the blame game here at all. But it was very difficult, And Sheri literally took me into her house, gave me the guest room, loaned me money to continue. Now, I recovered because the show started taking off, and I'm very comfortable. But I was literally living with her and her husband. She was making breakfast for me, and then we go do the show. I have so many funny moments. Most of them have been captured and talked about on the air. We started with nothing, literally. Thanks to Hudson, New York, we got on a roll, and then eventually ended up entertaining, the estimate was 900,000 people weekly. I don't know where I would have been without you. The idea that I met you just by chance is an amazing thing. And it does say that there's something out there with guidance. Because
It was so unlikely. It was so unlikely, but it was so, I mean, it was just so clearly meant to be from the very beginning. I mean, if you think about it, from the very first moment that we met, it was just, when we talk about our relationship, it sounds like some epic love story. And it has been an epic love story, but it's not been a romantic love story. It's been a different kind of epic love story.
I know that hurts you deeply.
It does hurt me. The number of times I've tried to claw through your room at the Marriott.
Instant access to the podcast, oddcast, fun size, and more with the free Bob and Sheri app.
So this is my final goodbye on the Bob and Sheri Show and my radio career. I'm not going to do any more broadcasting, but I have to say, I'm reminded of a quote by Carl Sandburg, who was just one of America's great poets. I visited his home in Flat Rock, North Carolina, several summers ago, and he said, "I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way." And that's kind of how I feel right now. We're kidding about, I'm going to become a birder, which I really think I'm going to do. I just got in touch with some folks who help to replenish oyster beds on Hilton Head Island, where I live, and I'm going to be doing that. And looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to becoming a better captain on the boat. Mary and I will be in Maine for a good part of the summer. I'll be visiting friends who live there. I'll be visiting my friend Jeff Fox, who has been a friend of mine since we met in Fall River, Massachusetts, when we were both 19 years old. Another guy I met was John Lambus, who got me my first full-time job and my first good job in radio. He was a producer, told me exactly what to say for an audition, and I am pleased to tell you that he lives 3 doors from me, and I see him every week. That is unexpected. It just worked out that way, that the two of us were two guys struggling to make a living as teenagers in radio, and I just love that those guys are still in my life. I think often of how lucky I am to have had a career where I get paid for being silly and having fun with friends. And when you think of the Bob and Sheri Show, always think of us as friends, because we were, we are, and we always will be. And I also am very grateful to heroes of the past, Lee Baby Sims on WPOP in Hartford, Joey Reynolds, Dan Ingram, Bruce Murrow, Murray the K, who I met once, and my absolute hero, Gene Shepard, who wrote A Christmas Story, the movie. Thanks to all of them. Thanks to all of you. And I will be showing up now and then. Everything looks great for me. I am just the luckiest guy.
It's Bob and Sheri.
If you're listening to this on the Bob and Sheri Daily Show podcast, that's the only way you can hear this, because this is just for you, our podcast listeners. It's been one of the really cool things that we've been able to do with this show. We've been able to grow it and evolve it, and we've been able to in part because we were just two stubborn gangsters who refused to hear the word no when someone said it to us. And in part because we were surrounded by a group of people that were like, yeah, they're gangsters, but they're not wrong. Tony, Max, Doc, Lamar, Heather, some of our early managers, Rick and Clark and Larry, and there's so many to thank, right? But back in 2006, we created an RSS feed that we now call the Bob and Sheri Daily Podcast. And so we've been doing it for a long time, 18 years. And I remember when it took off immediately, Bob and I would get emails from people all over the world who were like, I'm in Osaka and I'm listening to the show on your RSS feed. We once got a call from a group of soldiers in Baghdad who were listening on the RSS feed that we now call podcasting.
Right.
And as that grew, it was so fun to feel that other community of listeners out there, which is you, the podcast audience. And I remember just a few years ago, Bob saying to me, well, this is the damnedest thing. This is the damnedest thing that people can hear and want to hear your show in this way. So, Bob, as someone whose career spanned a lot of technological changes in radio, I thought you might want to talk to this group of listeners before you head out to look at birds. Because this group of listeners, y'all, you have no idea how much you have sustained us.
Yeah. There are two ways of looking at a radio career. One is you're going to be a local guy who super serves your town, whether the town is Taunton, Massachusetts, or Charlotte. You're the guy that everybody knows. And that is an admirable way to make a living. And it was originally my plan. I was going to be the male morning guy on a big 50,000 watt radio station. And I became that guy. And then I wanted something a little different, and I went to television. Prior to that, I was on, the name of the station was WBT, and it's 50,000 watts, and it goes from Maine to Florida, emanating out of Charlotte. And I was on at night when a lot of stations went off the air, so that signal would boom into wherever they were. And I was all of a sudden getting phone calls from Key West, Florida, from Georgia, from Vermont, occasionally Canada, occasionally a letter from Cuba. And it blew my mind. I just thought to myself, it wasn't like, oh, I'm so wonderful and so powerful. I have all of these people who are listening to me now. I mean, my show showed up in ratings number 3 in Jacksonville, Florida at night. And that was nice for my ego. But what I really wanted was the texture of talking to people in diverse places and life experiences. Studs Terkel wrote these books about Americans that I loved. And when I would pick up the phone and somebody was out in the barn and they were finishing up for the night and they were maple syrup farmers, I just couldn't get enough of them. And it drove me to not really want to so much interview celebrities, although we certainly did that. It drove me to really want to connect with working people, some rich, some poor, but Americans. And once the podcast started, it blew my mind because it was that 50,000 watt station on steroids. There were now people listening in the Philippines. There were people who were in the military listening all over. The Baghdad is the one that jumps out at me too. But there were people on the coast of Oregon and people in Hawaii and people in Ecuador. I mean, just the most, not bizarre, but just the most random places for a radio personality to pick up an audience. And it just made me so happy. And then they would call in, or they would they would write, they would text, they would email, and you could see the lives that they had. And I just thought, what a wonderful way to make a living. What? Who gets to do this? I do. You know? I mean, my inspiration
Yeah.
was Mad Magazine and Soupy Sales. That's all silly, sometimes very funny and cutting. But to be able to bring what we do to these folks that can't pick up the local radio station because we're not on the air in Ecuador, to have them there, it absolutely blew my mind, and I think just put such a cap on my career. And if you're a podcaster, I just want to thank you so very, very much. Sheri interacted with you much more than I did, but I received the benefit of her work and Max's work, and Heather and Doc, to be in that glow of a community that grew and grew and grew and just provided us with a way to keep the program going, and also with the satisfaction of having hundreds of thousands of people as listeners that we never would have had not the podcast taken off. And that, by the way, when I strip it right down, is pure Sheri Lynch. She saw it coming. She saw it coming. I never would, because I'm older. I never would have seen that coming. She saw it at its daybreak and made it happen. And Sheri, I love you for it. We all love you for it. But it just shows just what a visionary you are.
Well, I only got to be in that position because someone opened that door for me a long time ago when I didn't even know what the hell you were talking about. When you were talking about morning radio, I was like, I'm sorry, like every day? That seems so early. Aren't you tired?
The only time I ever saw you wince was we were on the air together for about 6 months, I guess, and we were asked to be the MCs for Celine Dion, and there were like 11,000 people in the audience, and we're backstage, and I'd been in front of audiences like that since I was a kid, teenager with a band, but Sheri was always, a producer. No camera on her, no microphone in front of her. All of a sudden, she's got a microphone in front of her, and we are about to go out and do a few lines. And then, I don't mean cocaine lines. I mean a few jokes.
Thank you for that, because it didn't even occur to me anybody would hear it that way.
Well, I was a musician for a while, Sheri. I didn't know about
right,
this.
you're a bad boy. A bad boy.
And so we're backstage, and they had these big doors that would swing open. And so you hear the band tuning up. And they go, okay, here we go. And they swing open, and we start walking out. And there's 11,000 people staring at us and staring at her for the first time. And she literally backed up like, I've got to get away from this danger. And I took my hand and pushed her to go forward, and then just, did my boisterous, hi, everybody, how are ya? Which, one of the great original lines of all time. And we went out and we did some jokes, and they went over, and then we said, here's Celine Dion. And at that point, her fear, I think, was over forever.
Well, I have to say, Bob, that and you're going to have to endure one last visit to the Baby Souls waiting room. So, I wrote, if you subscribe to the Bob and Sheri newsletter, the latest episode is entirely about Bob. We all wrote something about Bob. It's impossible for me to really, it would be a book, right? And everything I tried to write, I ended up deleting it because I was just a hot, sloppy mess. But I want to say this. I think for most people, you can't really make sense of your life until you get toward the end of it, where you begin seeing patterns and destiny points, inflection points where this decision took you one way. Had you made a different decision, your life will be unrecognizable to you. And something that I feel very blessed and lucky about is there are two people that came into my life and changed it utterly and completely. And I know that those two people were waiting for me to find them on the road. They were both a little bit older than me. One of them is Bob, and the other is my late dear friend, Marcia. And my life was forever set in motion by these two people. It was Marcia's pregnancy with Rachel, who is the daughter of my heart now, that brought me to Bob. I would never have met Bob had I not made the decisions involving this complete stranger who was pregnant and, can I cover for her? Never dreaming that she would not only become my dear friend, but that she would pass away and that would be its own separate journey. And I would have her daughter who's to protect, her heart to protect. But it was Marcia that led me to Bob. And it was Bob who was waiting for me on the road. And as soon as we met, Bob will tell you 10 seconds. That's exactly right. As soon as we met, it was like the tumblers inside me all tumbled into place. And I was like, oh, here you are. Now we can begin. And everything I have in my life, my children, my education, my books, my career, my car, my cats, the clothes I'm wearing, everything I have because of Bob. Because he kicked a door open for me that was never not only was it never going to open, I didn't know it existed. And in that moment, my life, like, your life, you're traveling down like the tracks, like an old rickety train. And my life in that moment, somebody pulled a switch and my life jumped to a new set of tracks. And I discovered that I was meant to do something that I didn't even know existed. That all of the things in my life, all of my experiences and my small, meager basket of abilities and talents were mobilizing in this direction. Because Bob and I both have the weirdest collection of skills, and we're doing the only thing we could do with the only person we could do it with. And it's really true. And our relationship, it was like just add water and boom. In no time at all, even though I knew nothing and made every mistake and was clueless and didn't even know what people were talking about most of the time for about 3 years and did not realize, like I thought I had a pretty good game face, but Bob told me many years later, he goes, oh, I knew you didn't. You were so skittish. You were so untrusting. It was so clear that you had been hurt by men and that you just couldn't trust one. And that's very true. All of that is very true, except weirdly, although I could not have articulated at the time because I was so young and so damaged and such an emotional basket case when I met Bob. I mean, I had just been shot out of the barrel of my extremely insane, violent upbringing when I landed in front of Bob. Even though it may have seemed that I was so mistrustful and skittish, the truth is there was immediate trust. Because when Bob reached out and said, I'm going to open this door and you can choose to walk through it, I did something I never do in life. I went, okay. I mean, you know me, I'm a Capricorn, I'm a worker bee. I want my data. Let's analyze the situation. Let's make decisions based on facts, not feelings. And here I am like, okay. And I can remember calling like my brother and my grandma black hair, who was still alive then, and going, I've been offered a job on the radio. And my brother was like, what? What do you mean you've been offered a job? Like on the CB radio? No, on the radio. Yeah. And my grandmother was so excited. And Bob and I have had a lot of magic in our careers. We can't prove to you that it was magic, but we know there were many, many times where I felt magic. You could call it the hand of God or fate or destiny or karma or the universe, however you would categorize it. But Bob and I had been together very, very briefly when the phone rang one day, and it was TNT, the television network. And they said, Bob and Sheri, we'd like you to host a TV show at a NASCAR race. And we just fell out because we know nothing, right? We're not
Right.
the right people. But for some reason, this offer came our way. And Bob and I found ourselves at the racetrack. And now I'm in the pit interviewing the legendary Richard Petty on national television. And if you're wondering why you've never seen Bob and I do more NASCAR stuff, here's why. Because we were never meant to, but my grandmother was in hospice care and she was dying. She had days to live. And her hospice worker, Kathy, turned on the TV and dragged it closer to my grandmom so my grandmom could watch me and Bob do this NASCAR TV show on TNT.
I remember
So
that.
my grandma in black hair, she loved Bob. Oh my God, she loved Bob so much. She's like, he's such a good one. That gift, my grandma in black hair died thinking that Bob and I were just on the verge of stardom. And there were so many glimmery, magical moments like that in our career where we would look at each other and go, this is pretty awesome. If it doesn't get any better than this is pretty great. Right up through taking the show independent. Even the COVID pandemic, which was devastating and we weren't even sure we'd survive it, it created a series of events that brought Doc to us. And so we're going to always be thankful for that. It's just been a lot of magic and a lot of glimmers. And at a time, Bob, when people change careers half a dozen times and there's so little continuity, you and I have been each other's home for most of my adult life.
It's true. It's true. And
that's pretty awesome.
People have asked me about the relationship every once in a while. And they say, so that's a long time to have a partner. I mean, you don't find that usually in a business unless you're Warren Buffett. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, so like really, how do you get along? I said, we've never really had an argument in 32 years. And people go, come on. I think the only time we disagreed on something was I wanted a trade on a Cadillac and you couldn't stand the dealer. I couldn't either, really, to be honest with you.
He was beastly. Yeah.
But I needed that. I needed a car because of the expense that I was incurring. And so we disagreed on that. If you take that away, I don't think I've ever really had an argument with you. That is almost impossible.
You know why? Because this was the particular work we were meant to do this time around. Like, I know y'all believe what you believe, okay? But I think this was the work we were meant to do. Now, we didn't understand what form it would take. I think we agreed at some point in the Baby Souls waiting room, probably, that let's see if we can't create a magic circle of community where people feel like they belong and it's about life. You know, it's not some fake bullshit stuff about life. It's real life, which is filled with pain and loss. And we have known that with you, our listeners, and with each other. It's filled with that, but there's all kinds of silly little joyful moments too. And when we gather around each other, it's easier to get through. I think that was what we agreed to do. We just didn't know that it would look like this and would be a radio show or a podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was our work that we agreed to. And I just have to say, well done. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm so delighted. Bob and I used to be like, oh my God, like we'd be sitting in the studio and we'd get an alert from one of the trades. Legendary broadcaster Dick Fruitbasket dies at the microphone. And Bob would be like, oh my God, please don't let that be me. Don't let that happen to me. And we would joke about it because for a long time, the expenses that were being thrown at Bob, it did seem like he and Dick Fruitbasket were going to have to die together at the mic.
It's true.
The idea of being able to retire and look at birds and go out to lunch with your beautiful wife that you're so happy with and to have grandchildren and to have your daughters living so close. This is such a big dream that we didn't dare dream it. We didn't dare ask for it. And the fact that it happened,
Yeah.
Bob never
I'm just
Bob never
very blessed.
dared to dream for this. Yeah, he never dared dream for this. But here it is. And nobody is sadder to see you go or happier to know that this is where you're going than I am.
I believe that completely. And I love you. And it's just been such a delight to have you in my life and to do the radio show with you. It has been so much fun. I don't know how I lucked out like this, but
No
there
kidding.
it is. Yeah.
We did. We had a
So
blast.
thank you.
And now, Bob,
Thank you to everyone.
if you could just ask people to not say mean stuff to Lamar, that would be great. Because I know change is hard. But Lamar, don't make Lamar the target.
Nice.
I can't. When I see comments, almost all of them are so supportive of Lamar. So and why would they not be? He's one of the most entertaining radio personalities that's available. And one of the great things about what's going to happen for you guys, both with the Oddcast, the podcast, and the radio show, is that once in a while I will hear another radio show, if we have the day off or whatever, and I'm going somewhere and I put it on. And the people are talking, and usually they're talking all over each other, and I'm listening to what's going on. And there's one female voice, and there's two or three guys, and I can't tell one guy from the other. With the Bob and Sheri show, if you just turned it on, you would immediately know every voice, because every voice is so different. And that is one of the things that Lamar brings. He's not just another male voice. He's got that voice. It is so
and that
distinctive.
Perspective. Yeah.
And that
That perspective.
It's really a gift to the show. And also, I mean, he's very, very funny. Also to the audience. So I just realized that the other day, that you could put the Bob and Sheri show on, and you knew, oh, that's Bob speaking, that's Lamar, oh, that's there, obviously that's Sheri and Max. Everybody's voice is so different, and so there was no confusion. Is that Biff or Tommy, or Roger? Oh, there's the girl. The girl was the one that would jump out. And I think that makes this program, one of the things that makes this program so unique.
Well, Bob, I've tortured you now with the baby souls. And now, for the final time, I'm going to sing to you, and I'm going to ask the guys to join in. They'll know the song. Are you ready to be sung to one last time with my incredibly distinctive and one-of-a-kind terrible?
Can't Max take the lead on it? I mean, do whatever you want.
Join in, Max and Lamar. Ready? And I picked a song that was made famous by another show business legend who was one of a kind in their particular talents and gifts, and who has enjoyed and continues to enjoy a pretty incredible career that has spanned many, many things like you. Here we go. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, when comes the time we have to say so long.
That's sweet. That is really sweet. Awful, but really, really sweet.
Oh, you're going to miss it. I might just leave singing voicemails on your phone. Thank you to our podcast audience for the love and the support. You just have no idea. You're the reason we do it. Tell them, Bob, one last time.
You are. It sounds almost like, I don't know, just cornball show business stuff, like you're the reason we do it. But honest to God, we would not have careers if we didn't have people that were, I like to call you patrons, not the crowd, not even listeners, patrons, because when you show up, that means we get paid and we can spend money on other people in our family. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Take care.